So once all the data is elevated up to, or once all the required data, so the main data is elevated up to 3D, then we can start assigning our individual areas with their different makeups. So the first step is to categorize the layers into different types of categories. So the first category is basically anything that's going to form the original surface. So anything that was defined in the original surface goes into this category called original. And that would include any areas that maybe have been cored. So maybe the example we've got here is existing concrete. Then they would go in there and we can assign a core depth and we can actually volumize that material that's existing on the site. The next category is design. And basically anything in the design layer, if it has a 3D value, then it will form, anything in the design category which has a level will form the design surface. Anything that doesn't have a level, so it's assigned with an undefined level, will be used to delineate the individual areas. To delineate individual areas, then we basically want to make sure that we select them and we say contained potential boundary lines. So this contains 2D and 3D data. We can assign site improvements to any closed areas. So for instance here, I know that the foundations are all closed. So if I select a layer that's called plots offset in and elevated, I can tick the box to the left-hand side and I can say that entire layer I want to associate with a site improvement, and it's going to be the site improvement called house foundation. That can only be done to basically any layers that has enclosed polygons. So you can see that I've assigned the same to patios here as well. We can also do curb counts. I'm going to disassociate this site improvement. So let's just untick that option and we can take that off, say none to that one, because I have my curb count's been done in a different way here, which we'll come back to later on. So anything else, we can basically stick to these other categories. But the main thing is we need to put anything for the design in the design category, and anything that describes the original ground level surface needs to go in here. And again, just to reiterate, I generally just stick all my OGL data into the same layer. So once that's assigned, then we can basically just go into the Identify Site Regions option. And normally what we're going to do is we're going to associate the regions that have designs. So we can go back in and we can now start assigning the individual site improvements. So basically what happens is the site improvement will spill out from the seed point that's selected. So we don't want to have layers in the category that aren't required. So one of them I want to remove is I need to make sure that the road center line is removed. So we just go into the design category and we go to road center line and we just say that remove the boundary lines from that. So once that's been deselected, then we can carry on and we can go into Identify Site Regions. So Identify Site Regions, choose Design. Notice how we have the option Highlight All Potential Boundaries. In the layer, we generally always want to put these layers in Site Improvements. So I'm just going to choose Site Improvement. And what we can put here is a gap tolerance, because the drawing, especially a lot of the design drawings, is never perfect. So we can see some bits and pieces here, they're just not quite closing. Now we could of course do is edit that data. let me just, we could edit the data so it does close, or what we can do is put in a tolerance here that's acceptable. So we can just go in here and we can say, look, as far as we're concerned, as long as it's got within 50 mil, then we're going to say that that's a closed region. And we should see that if we just choose OK, then all these, or the vast majority of these ones that were not working before, are now showing closed off properly. There's just a couple of ones that need attention. So you can see here that driveway is not drawn properly, so that will need manually addressed, but everything else seems fine. So before I do it, I'm just going to sort this last driveway. So I'm just going to select it, and I can just convert it to a line string, which gives me some extra tools. When we convert it to a line string, I can choose, you can see this option of perpendicular snap, and you can see we snapped it into that value there. So we now go back to, hopefully for the last time, identify site regions. We go to design, and now we can start allocating our roads, our site improvements rather. So we'll start with the roads. So you can see we've got some different types of materials here. So we're going to start with a road with no capping, black chip. And you can see it just floods out until it hits a boundary that's in the design that has a boundary that's marked as containing a potential boundary. So we've got road with black chip, then we've got road with red chip with capping. So we fill that bit in, and that's also here. And then finally we've got road with black chip and capping as well. And again, it just floods out. The laybys we can just fill in. So all these laybys have the same makeup. So we're just clicking in each individual area. It just floods out until it hits a boundary. Okay. And then we can go to the next region. So we might want to use the topsoil. So this is basically where so what I would probably do here is I would normally take the fences out of the boundary, so it just floods out in its entirety. But if not, then we just need to drop a seed point into each area. And basically that's just marking where we're going to reuse the topsoil after the topsoil strip. So I'm just going to undo this one. That driveway shouldn't have it, and that should have it there. And I'm just going to continue to work my way through, filling in until we've got a fully coloured in area. The one thing I'll just mark is here, the one thing I'll mention is here for the areas underneath the roads. Then I'm choosing this footpath road with a 500 capping transition. What I would normally do here is there's a 20 mil gap in the curb. I would, for all the accuracy it makes, I would basically leave that null and don't put material in it. So I'll stop the video and carry on and complete this task. So this is basically the site fully coloured up. So we've assigned the garden footpaths, block paving for the driveways, the transition areas and the footpaths where we've got the road box, and then we've got garden footpaths, house foundations and reinstated topsoil with turf. So basically that's the entire site coloured up. To remove something that you want, so if you've identified a region falsely, you've put the wrong site improvement on it, then what we can do is we can basically just choose remove identity. So if we just choose one of these driveways, then we can just choose remove identity, and it will basically remove the site improvement. But basically, also, just so you're aware, we are putting these site improvement, it's a layer called SIV site improvement. That layer is currently turned off. But if I turn that layer on, you will basically see a small seed point within each area. If you delete that seed point, then it will also delete all the site improvements. So basically that point contains site improvement, it floods out until it hits a boundary, and if you remove the boundary, then it will basically flood out further, or if you delete that seed point, then it will basically delete the site improvement. So when that's done, if I just restore this, so we go to the block paving again, and we add that site improvement. So that is now basically all the existing site improvements, the design site improvements put in place. Just to show you an existing site improvement, if I just drag, so this has got an existing, this site has got an existing concrete, old concrete roads in place, that extends outside the topographical survey. So if I just grab this layer called, just put it in a suitable layer, so we'll just put that into a layer called OGL, existing concrete, and if I just deselect that, and if I just turn that layer on so we can see it, OGL existing concrete, and if I go to identify site regions, and this time I'm going to choose that this is an original, and because it's already assigned, then it will automatically assign that area to the site improvement that's original concrete. And obviously the material and site improvement library will contain the values of how much concrete or whatever is in that existing road. So after that, once we've marked up all areas, then it can be very useful to basically generate something that we can put to a drawing. So we can choose to validate site improvement areas. So we can choose design. The validation would normally go to the site improvement validation, and we can basically choose a transparency that works, and then we can use area of interest. Well, we haven't subdivided this site, so we're going to do the entire site, and then we can just hit apply. And if we turn on this validation, so site improvement validation, and hit apply, then this basically becomes something that we can print out or plot and put to a drawing. So it's got all our makeups and we can put a legend to it. So that's basically a quick run through on identifying site regions for doing a site improvement. The next step would be to build the surfaces. So at this, I'm going to hit build surfaces, and it will basically churn through and build the surfaces, and we'll cover the next step in the next guide.